Okay, so here we are at the third pass. Now, this isn't going to be nearly as intensive as our first two. We're basically there in terms of the grade. We've got a few little things to take care of here and there. Maybe a few little bits of fine match as and when they occur to us. But the main thing we're going to take care of here is this shot. Then we've got another yellow flag shot over here, this one. And then we're going to go through a little bit of noise reduction, and then we're going to do our final export. So, we'll start by fixing this. Now, it's pretty close, but it does need a little bit of extra work. It's not quite there if we watch this through in real time. It's still a little bit bright, it's a little bit off. The colour of the skin is there, I think. Just because the skin is the brightest thing in the image, I just don't want things to blow out and get really kind of odd and glowy, so let's just... I think what gets it is that bits of this, like this part of the hair is quite odd and saturated. This part of the hair, the highlight on this hair here is a bit odd and a bit bright. So let's see what we can do about the really odd bits of hair. In that case, let's see if a HSL will help us out. Let's just see how close we can get. We don't want to hit the skin. Okay, I think that's a pretty reasonable key. We're only going to take saturation down a little bit, so it doesn't have to be super, super accurate. So now we'll just take the saturation down. There we go. If we see the key bits we've got, we're taking care of these very bright, very saturated bits. So let's just take that down. Yeah, that just takes a little bit out of the hair and makes it a bit more down to earth. Let's see how that... And because obviously the hair here isn't nearly as saturated. Between these two now, that's fine. The hair's quite bright on this one. Looking at the way she turns, adding a vignette might be a little bit impractical, so maybe we can just bring the mids down. Might not need a new node there. Skin still feels very saturated in there, so let's just take some of the red saturation down. That's getting more like it now. Because it's quite bright, quite white skin here. It was looking a little bit tanned. That's now a better match to me. Okay, I'm willing to call that good. It's always better to come back at these with fresh eyes. This probably would have taken me much longer during the second pass when I was just kind of dwelling on it and not quite seeing what was wrong. But coming back to it like an hour later, half an hour later, really helps out. So the last thing we're going to do is take care of this this last shot with the yellow flag. Now, if you want a bigger viewer, hold Alt and hit F. You lose sight of your node tree, but you get more space on the viewer. And we're just going to make a new node, and we're going to take out some of these shadows here. Some of them are a little bit saturated, and also I can see some odd greeny yellow tinting here, whilst everything else is neutral. So what we'll do is we'll just make a selection around yellow and green. And that also helps clean it out, make it more neutral. And that's now just reduced the yellow and the green we've got there. Now this is quite a noisy shot, but we're going to go through noise reduction just now. So now we've cleared out all the remaining issues. We've got our green flags. The whole edit is fine. The client loved the last edit and wouldn't want to change very much at all. So we've got quite an easy way to finish this one. we're just going to go through noise reduction here, and then we're going to go through final delivery. Now, noise reduction is a feature of the paid license of Resolve. You cannot get DaVinci Resolve noise reduction in the free version. So if you're using the free version and you have something like the Neat Video plugin, go ahead and use that. If you don't worry. This isn't something you'll be able to do without putting a watermark on your footage. Resolve will let you use noise reduction in the free version, but it'll add a watermark if you do that. Or if you import... no, I got that wrong. Resolve typically won't let you add noise reduction in the free version, but if you import a project with it on, it'll then produce a watermark until you have a paid license. So, it's good stuff to know, because some people use noise reduction very heavily, others don't want to use it at all, and the truth is it's a very useful tool, and we're just going to go through how to use it here. So I like to add my NR or noise reduction in the group post clip, because all of these clips in the group are going to take the same settings. And we'll just go over a little bit of what the spatial NR and temporal NR actually does. So we have two forms of noise reduction that we use in Resolve. One is spatial and one is temporal. And we're going to go over spatial first. So spatial essentially reduces the appearance of noise grains. So if we look at this image, we can see individual grains in the blue here, or in the shadows, you can see it gets a bit grainy. Or if we zoom right in, we can see grains here. Now, as we increase our spatial noise reduction, those grains get blurred out and softened out and become less obvious. But if we introduce too much noise reduction, then the NR starts to do its own thing and starts to soften the image. It looks odd. It looks kind of almost plasticine-y and tactile. It's not exactly what we want for film. So we need to strike a balance. We need to strike a balance of making sure distracting grain is not as visible as it currently is, and not making the image too kind of smooth and almost blurry. Now, there are a few ways of doing spatial NR. Faster is faster to render and is more heavy-handed. It's rough and ready, and it's not great. I mean, I might use a little bit of faster NR if I'm preparing a plate for tracking for a VFX artist, although they typically like to do their own thing. Better is what I tend to use most of the time. Better is not as heavy-handed. It preserves more detail, smooths things out a bit less. It's more GPU intensive. If you have a less powerful GPU, let's say if you're still on a 700 series or something like that, GTX 700, then the noise reduction is going to start pushing you below real-time performance. Resolve 15 is pretty good with its real-time playback now and its dynamic kind of preview, but there are still limitations here. And then we have enhanced, and enhanced is better still, but is much more intensive on the GPU. I'm running a 1080 Ti, and a relatively small amount of enhanced noise reduction is causing me to drop below real-time playback. So, and you might be able to hear my machine spinning up in the background there. I'm going to leave it at better, and I typically never put noise reduction higher than about 20, unless it's a really, really noisy shot. Then you start to lose detail, you start to blur things out. We're going to put noise reduction here at about 16. That's still on the high side, but this is quite a noisy camera, it's quite a noisy shot. And we can now help it out with the next form of noise reduction. I should probably go over radius here. So small, medium and large radius is essentially the area of effect of the effect. If we put it on large, then we blur the grains together even more, like blur a larger number of adjacent grains together. On small, we do that in a smaller radius. So the next form of noise reduction is temporal. Now, temporal samples between different frames and then tries to smooth out the motion of errant pixels. The difference between temporal and spatial is that spatial will make the individual grains, like the noise, less visible, but the motion is still there. If we look at this image, the grains are kind of blurred out, but we can still see them chattering, yeah? So what we then use is temporal. Temporal smooths out the motion of the actual grains of noise themselves by sampling between frames and trying to just calm down the kind of chattering that we get, and it does so without interfering with major details. So typically we do either 2 or 3 frames. This is the number of frames we sample when we're looking at the motion. I tend to stick for 2 and better, and the temporal threshold I put up to about 15. And then we'll see how that goes. Now, temporal is very GPU intensive, but now we can already see that chattering is really quite intense there. And if we put our temporal back on, it really calms down quite a lot. It's really, really saved the image. Now I might bring the temporal, the luma chroma threshold down a little bit. That's still a little bit noisy, so I'll bring it up. I'd say about 14, 15 is okay. I'm going to leave motion at 50. We'll go over that in a more advanced project. And now, whereas before we had quite a noisy image, now our image is quite nice and smooth. The grain is gone, the noise is gone. And now when we look at the whole thing, and if we look at before and after, we haven't really lost any significant detail. A little bit. If we look closely, we've got a little bit of blurring on the detail of the skin here. A little bit of skin blur can be quite desirable in many cases. It's not significant detail, it's still there. It doesn't look like a blur filter, so that's okay. And now we have these shots sorted. Now, in more intensive grades and in future real-world projects, we're going to take a look at something called the render cache, which allows us to bank in an image and then play it back in real time, when otherwise it would be too taxing on our system to play back in real time. Because we're only really using this for noise reduction here, we don't need it, we don't really need it. We can put the NR on and render out. But in future more advanced projects we will go over that, don't worry. It's my intention to update this course quite regularly with new lectures, new videos, and of course new real-world projects. It is my intention to produce one of those every month or so, but I do work freelance and my hours are very unpredictable. I will try my hardest to keep to that. But real life has a habit of getting in the way. I'm not going to let this course go for months and months without an update, don't worry. I'm intending to get between four, 5 or 6 real-world projects in by the time this course is in inverted commas finished, and I move on to updating it to just really include new features of Resolve. So that's how we apply noise reduction. Now I'm not going to film myself repeatedly applying this to every single shot like I did with the face vignettes. I think you've got enough information there. So go through and experiment with the noise reduction, go through with the shots, take a look at each shot and make a decision as to how much noise reduction each shot needs. This shot needs a fair amount. This whole sequence needs a fair amount. The FS7, or I think it may have been a 700, can be quite a noisy camera, and we have made some quite bright images. As you add gain, the noise gets more extreme, but then this is the bright image that we and our client wanted. So go ahead, go through with a noise reduction pass, and then when you're done, it's time to render out. And we'll just recap that quickly. In the case of this project, a single clip is absolutely fine. We'll leave it in QuickTime and we'll spit it out in DNx HD. It's a 1080 project, so DNx HD is fine. And we can choose either DNx 185 10-bit or DNx 4x4, 4444. Either of those is okay. Because this is going to be rendered out from again, I prefer to use 4444 or 4x4 because it's the biggest container and preserves the largest amount of information, and it loses the least during compression of all the options there. So then we can spit this out as a single clip and we can give that to our client. So this would be, in this case, this would be PC01_03. This is the third pass. It'll be the third time the client has seen it. Then underscore MJF, my initials. And then if you want to, you can put another underscore and today's date there. What is the date today? Which in my case would be 19/09/2018. And then we know exactly what's going on, we know exactly when this was made, what pass number it is, and then we just spit this out, we give it a file location in a deliverables folder, PC01, then we'll hit add to render queue and then just hit start render. So make sure you have all of your noise reduction in place when you do this, and then go ahead and render it out. And you've now finished your first real-world project. So I really hope this was a good learning experience. I really hope this was good practice. If you've done this the first time, if you've followed along and produced this grade, that's great. It would be ideal if you went at it again with a different direction and produced your own version of it just to get that practice in. In the meantime, go through, if you have any projects of your own, like just use this and see, use what I've taught you here and see how far you get. I'm always on hand. I do work by UK time. I live in England. So I will try and get back to messages within a reasonable time frame. But if you're in America or Australia, for example, keep in mind my responses will not be instantaneous because there'll be, an 8 or a 12-hour time difference there. So I'm on Greenwich Mean Time. So, great. This has been a really good demonstration project. I hope you've learned a lot from this. So go at it, and I'm going to keep regularly updating this course. So keep checking back for new videos and, of course, new real-world projects. We're going to have quite a few. I'm currently talking to clients about getting some R3D Red Raw material cleared for use, so we should have some Red Raw for decode as well later on. That'll be really good. Right, please let me know what you think so far in the forum, and if you have any questions, if you have any problems you're running into in your own projects, ask away, and I'll be happy to help as and when I get the time. Right, great. Once you're ready and the next lecture has indeed been published, click on through to the next lecture.